welcome to 633. We really are so glad that you guys are here. My name is Philip, and I said this before, but I'm one of the pastors here at Hibernia, and I really am. I'm so glad to be here. So I'll give you just a quick, as time goes on, I'll share more and more of my story, but I actually grew up here in Fleming Island. I graduated from Fleming Island High. I went to Lakeside. Oh man, the rivalry is just for real. So, no, I graduated from Fleming Island High, and my class was actually the very first class that, when I was in middle school, they just built Fleming Island. So I was an 8th grader getting ready to go into 9th grade, and so we had the option that we could either go to Clay High, go to Fleming Island, or go to Orange Park. So they were giving like all of us the option of what you wanted to do. Because we weren't going to have seniors, our sports weren't going to be very good, and they weren't very good at that time. But my class was actually the very first class that went from 9th grade all the way to senior year at Fleming Island. It was crazy. It was really cool because like everything was brand new, like in the building and stuff too. So it was like really pretty and nice at the time. So anyways, 2007, I graduated from Fleming Island, and then time goes on, I ended up becoming a Christian. I'll share more about that at a later date. And then I ended up moving to North Carolina. I ended up becoming a pastor there. I met my wife, and then not even a year later, we ended up moving to Texas. And so I'm in Texas. Yeah, Texas was pretty cool, man. It was good. They got really good barbecue. Really good barbecue. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I'm in Texas for 2.5 years, and then Pastor Scott calls me up, and then he ends up inviting me to come on staff here at Hibernia. What's crazy is, and what's crazy is we ended up accepting the job, and we loved the church that we were at in Texas. It really was a great church. It was an awesome place. We loved it. But this is home for me. So, man, this is great. Y'all know, like, whenever you've just been gone for a while, you come home. You know, it just feels good to be home whenever you walk in. It's like, yes. And that's kind of what it felt like. The weird part was, though, I ended up coming here and then COVID happens. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, so, like, what do I do? You know? Like, oh, let's do some virtual stuff with the students, which we needed to do. And I was just like, okay, that's really weird, because now you guys, for any of you guys who actually watch some of the stuff online, like, you have to get to know someone virtually. It's just, it's not the same, you know what I mean? It's not the same. Like, personal relationships really do matter. Like, I'm not saying the screen doesn't matter, because I mean, it's cool, like, we get to access a lot of different things, but man, face-to-face interactions really do matter. And I don't know if any of you guys have realized this, but us not being able to gather has probably made us, I don't know, more grateful. It's made definitely me more grateful of like being able to gather together. That's why tonight I was so pumped. I was so pumped. So, a statement that I love to say is note takers are world changers. So if you guys bring notepads, take it on your phone. One thing that I just ask during this time is, man, y'all can get on social media, you can get on Snapchat, you can get on whatever it is that you want to get on at any other time. Just during the message and during the worship, I just ask that you guys just not be on that during the time. You know what I'm saying? But note takers are what? Y'all are going to hear me say it all the time. Note takers are world changers. And so, we're in a series called The You Effect. And I'm really excited about this series. For one, because when I talk to students, one thing that I think that they don't realize is that they have more of an effect on people. It may not even sink into us that we actually do have more of an effect on people than we ever realize. For example, I have a friend. His name's Chuck. We call him Ginger Jesus. He's like, I mean, pure redheaded guy. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, we call him Ginger Jesus. He's hilarious. Chuck's one of those guys that, like, when you're around Chuck, you're just immediately, you could be having the worst day, but when you're around Chuck, you're just in a better mood. You know what I'm saying? Like, Chuck is absolutely hilarious, and he doesn't care, like, what anybody else thinks about him. He's the life of the party. Chuck is the funniest dude in the room. When I'm around Chuck, my day is immediately better. I'm having a great time whenever I'm in the presence of Chuck. See right there, Chuck, he affects me. He affects me in a positive way. I've also had some friends who affect me in a negative way. And now, I don't know if this is for you, but have you ever had someone have an effect on you? Have you ever had someone have an effect on you? See, what's interesting though, for maybe some of you guys, you may have some people who affect you in a positive way. You may have some people who affect you in a negative way. What's interesting is the people who affect us, whether for a positive or whether for negative, they probably don't even realize how much they actually affect us. They probably don't even realize how much they actually affect the way we behave, the way we think, the way we talk, and even the things we believe. The people around us can affect us for good and also for what? Yeah, not so good, bad. But then a question that I have for you, and I think it'll be up on the screen. Have you ever thought about the effect that you have on people? Have you ever thought about the effect that you have on people? It's so easy for us to think about other individuals, the way that people might affect us. You know, that person that you can even think of right now, that they made a mark on your life for a negative, they made a negative mark on your life because of the thing that they said about you. That could have been years ago, and you have never let it go. You could have some friends that have been pulling you in a direction that you look and you're like, you know what? I don't know if that's necessarily the best direction for my life. Maybe they're having an effect on you, and they don't even realize it. But it's so easy for us. Well, we also have positive effects, too. I'm not just talking about negative effects. But it's so easy for us to think about what other people, the effects that other people have on us. But do we ever stop, student? Do we ever stop to ponder the effects that we have on people? Because we have an effect on people as well. So tonight, we're going to be learning, kind of in this series, but specifically for tonight, we're going to be learning, because of Jesus, you have more of an effect than you realize. For those of you guys who are taking notes, it'll be up on the screen. Seth, you're doing an amazing job. I'm proud of you, brother. Love you, man. Because of Jesus, you have more of an effect than you realize. Now, I do want to speak to anyone in here, if this is your first time at 633 or even at a Hibernia student service or even just a service in general, man, I just want to say we are so glad that you're here. I also want to say you may be here and you're not even really sure what you believe. You know, you're in a church service, you're like, you know, Phil, I'm the guy, I don't even really know what it is that I believe, but you know what? A friend invited me and I came. I want you to know, listen to me. I'm so glad, and we are so glad that you are here. A statement that I love to say is you don't need to have your whole life in this faith journey figured out. You don't need to have your whole life cleaned up for you to come and be a part of this student ministry family. Come as you are. I want you guys to know you are so welcome to come and be a part of this family. Because I really do believe the more and more that you come, man, I really do believe that you're going to encounter the living God, and He's got something for you guys. All right? So tonight we're going to be in John chapter 6. We're going to be in John chapter 6. Y'all got your Bibles. We're going to be in John chapter 6. So you can go ahead and turn in your Bibles. You can go ahead and get it up on your phone, your tablet, whatever it is. You can even take notes if you guys got the Bible app. You can even take notes on the Bible app. If y'all didn't know that, it's really cool. It's really cool. I do that sometimes. John chapter 6. So again, if you're kind of new to the Christian faith, or maybe you're just here and you're kind of just checking out the whole Christian faith, let me give you a little bit of background before we get into it, because I think it's important, because you might be new to the Bible and you're like, there was a point in my life I was new to the Bible. I remember sitting in the Hibernia service one day. I had a little old lady and she was sitting to my left or right, doesn't matter at this point. She's sitting next to me. And I think it was Pastor Scott, I think he said something about like, turn to John something. And I literally was flipping through the Old Testament, and I was like, man, I was like, I'm gonna be in trouble right here. This sweet little old lady said, sweetheart, let me see your Bible real quick. Let me see your Bible. And she turns to John. I said, it's way back there in the Bible, okay? Because I think I was in Genesis. It was gonna take me a long time to get to John, all right? So if you're that individual, I just want you to know, you're in good company, all right? We're glad that you're here, all right? I felt the same way. So let me give you a little bit of background, because I think background is important before we just go jump into something, because you might be like, whoa, how did we get here? What's going on with this story? So John was a close friend and follower of Jesus. John was literally probably one of his closest friends. We know that through some other stories in the scriptures. But John, he saw Jesus, literally with his own two eyes, saw Jesus perform incredible miracles. I guess a miracle is already incredible, but I'm just going to add the word incredible miracles anyways, because they were. All right? And he sees these things that are happening. And he sees this guy named Jesus. And he sees all these things that he's doing. And then Jesus goes on to predict that he's going to die on the cross,
He's going to be buried, and then he's going to rise from the grave. Bodily rise from the grave, by the way. And so next thing you know, John and them and follow around, and John, he's recording all of this stuff for us. That's what we're about to read. He's recording all this stuff. He literally is one of the guys, I think he's the only guy, the scripture says, that ends up seeing Jesus crucified. And he's one of the only guys at the empty tomb, and then he ends up hanging out with Jesus 40 days before Jesus bodily resurrects on the third day, and they're hanging out together before he ends up ascending back up to heaven. Here's what's so cool. John, who's a close associate, friend, follower of Jesus, he records all these stories for us. Why does he do that? His purpose for writing this is so that we would believe in Jesus, that he is the Savior of the world, and that anyone who puts their faith and trust in him will have forgiveness of sins and eternal life. That's it. That's the purpose of it. All right, so now we're going to go jump in to John chapter 6. This is one of those stories that's really familiar. It's actually in all four of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then John. And we're picking up this story in John 6 where Jesus is feeding over 5,000 people. It's an amazing story. All right, John 6 verses 1 through 15. Y'all ready? After this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee near Tiberias. A huge crowd was following him because of the signs that he was performing by healing the sick. Jesus went up on a mountain and he sat down there with his disciples. Verse 4. Now the Passover, a Jewish festival, was near. So when Jesus looked up and noticed a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip. It's weird that Philip's reading the story. He asked Philip, "Where will we buy bread so that these people can eat?" He asked this to test him. For he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii worth of bread wouldn't be enough for each of them to have a little. By the way, I want to pause here and say, I'm reading out of the CSB translation, because sometimes, y'all know like when a pastor's reading out a translation, you're not reading out of it, and you're like, okay, I can't even follow you. You're just acting like you're following them. You know what I'm saying? Anybody else? Okay, that was just me. We're going to keep going. That was just me. You're just acting like you're following along, but you're not reading a word. All right. 200 denarii worth of bread wouldn't be enough for each of them to have a little. Verse 8, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "Well, there's a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000. That's why we say it's over 5,000, because they only just counted the men in his day. Then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also with the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were full, he told the disciples to collect the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. So they collected them and filled the 12 baskets with pieces from the 5 barley loaves that were left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that he had done talking about Jesus, they said, "This truly is the prophet who is come into the world." Therefore, when Jesus realized they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Now, this story is an amazing story. It's an incredible miracle. I think there's something here that I want to make sure that we understand what's really going on here in the matter of time that I have with you guys. But I also want you to realize this, that even though this story is 2,000 years ago, that there's something for you, student, here in Fleming Island, Florida in 2020. There's still something for you to be able to apply to your lives and for me to my life. Now, what I'm going to do here, I always like to explain what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take, I don't have time to unpack everything, so I'm just going to take a few of the sections of the verses, unpack it real quick, then we'll make some application, and then also, by the way, we're going to break out into small groups. That's why we have a bunch of the adult leaders here. They're amazing adult leaders, but we're going to break out into small groups, gender and grade specific. And the reason for that, especially for those of you who are introverts and you're like, oh my gosh, is he going to make me talk in front of people? We're not going to make you. Right, we're not going to make you. So the introverts, go ahead and start processing that you are going to be in a group at some point tonight, and hopefully you'll talk a little bit, okay? So the reason for that, though, the reason that I want you guys to get into groups is because it's very important that you're able to hear be able to listen what you just heard, if that makes sense, and then be able to go into a group and process it out loud and to be able to discuss it. Does that make sense? Because one thing that I see with individuals is they'll listen to messages. I'm not saying for everyone, but then they walk out and it's like, wait, and then the next day it's like, what? I don't remember what that was, which is always so encouraging for a pastor, you know what I mean? It's so encouraging. Hey, Pastor, I don't remember what you talked about yesterday. That's great. So, we're going to talk in the groups
and just be able to like process out loud. All right, what are the things that you heard from this? And be able to take some principles that you guys can be able to apply to your life. Y'all got me? That's the reason for that. Okay, setting some foundation here. John 6, verses 4 through 7. Y'all ready? Let's go. Now the Passover, a Jewish festival was near. So when Jesus looked up and he noticed a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip, where are we going to buy bread? I know this isn't the exact translation. Okay, this is the Philip translation, just added some words here. Where are we going to buy bread so that these people can eat? He asked this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii worth of bread would be enough for each of them to have a little. Philip is thinking logically. Do you see here? So what Philip's doing is, he looks at the crowd, he's like, okay, I'm looking at a Jesus. We looking like, we got about 5,000 men, Jesus, we got about 5,000 men. Okay, so what that also means is, add some more to that. You feel what I'm saying? Add some more to that. Okay, because there's women and children. Yeah, we're looking like a lot more than that, Jesus. And so, as I'm calculating all of this, 200 worth of denarii. What that means is that's like that's like 9 months' salary. Okay? That's like 9 months' salary. I was going to say 3/4, and I was like, I don't know what he says. That's like a 9-month salary. Okay, we're talking about a lot of money. All right? So, Philip is the logical thinker in this scenario. He's thinking from a natural perspective. He's thinking from a human perspective, which is, guess what? We're all humans in here, right? I hope so. Good night. If one of y'all said, nah, I'd be like, security, we got security. Jeff, you security? Okay. We'll be like, oh boy. Philip's thinking logically. He's thinking from a human perspective. But if you notice, Jesus doesn't always operate from that. Jesus ends up doing a miracle, and he's going to show Philip, he's going to show him, you're thinking in the natural, but I work in the supernatural, and I'm going to do something that's going to blow your mind. Anybody in here, anybody logical thinkers, like you're the one, just like when you're with your friends, you're the logical person, because your friends are about to do something really stupid, but you're the one who's like, time out, guys. We need to think this one through a little bit. And they're like, no, we're not going to think this through. Let's just do it. Like, no. We need to really think this one through, guys. So when I was growing up, Eagle Harbor Pool. Anybody like members to the Eagle Harbor Pool? I really know like that. Any hands? 3 of y'all. It's fine. No worries. Okay. So I lived in Eagle Harbor at the time. Eagle Harbor. If you were going to bring some friends into the Eagle Harbor Pool, all right, you had to have a pass. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody for the pass? Okay. If you're not familiar, to bring friends into the Eagle Harbor Pool, you had to have a pass. The problem was they only let you bring in a couple people. Okay? So, for the logical person, I remember my friends one time being like, hey, well, I think at this point I wasn't living in Eagle Harbor. Okay, besides the story, we'll piece it together as we go. So here's what ends up happening. Here's what happens. My friends are saying, there's 4 of us, okay? All right, not including himself. There's 4 of us. He goes, hey, I got you guys. We're going to go to the Eagle Harbor Pool. We're going to go hang out. We're going to have a great time. All right, but I only have a pass for 2 of y'all. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, and I'm not always the logical. I had a friend who was a logical person in this scenario. So the logical thinker ends up looking down the line. He goes, hey, so-and-so. He goes, there's 4 of us. You said you only have a pass for 2. So like what's gonna, for the other 2 of us, like what's gonna happen here? He goes, oh, don't worry. He's like, we'll just sneak the other 2 of y'all in. You know what I mean? Okay, so we were the group of friends who ended up like sneaking people in. All right, I'm not advocating that because they could end up getting some trouble. But the logical person ended up looking at the scenario and said, hey, bro, you said you were gonna get like all of us in, but like your pass only has 2. And there's 2 others. Okay, the point is, that's Philip. Philip's in the scenario, and Jesus is like looking out, and he said, calculate like how much it's going to end up feeding all these people. And Philip's probably looking at him like, bro, are you for real? I mean, you see like there's thousands of people, right? I'm not saying he's saying this. I can see Philip just thinking this, like, hey, Jesus, that's a lot of people, man. And how much is it going to take to feed all of these people? And then the logical thinker in Philip is like, well, let's go ahead and let's calculate all of this. But I love what Jesus ends up doing, because Jesus asked this to test him, because he knew himself what he was going to do. Jesus already knew what he was going to do. He already knew that. The question was to test Philip. It was to test Philip to prove the extraordinary act of the miracle. And it was going to strengthen his faith. Student, what you see in this story here, as he goes and asks him this question, he already knew what he was going to do. He already knew it. So then why does he end up asking the question? It's to show him the extraordinary act of the miracle and at the same time strengthen his faith. And only God, and I really believe this, in this story, only God can multiply what we cannot. While Philip is looking at it from a human perspective and saying, there's no way. Like, Jesus, there's no way. We cannot feed all of these people. And Jesus sits back thinking, yeah. He don't even know what's about to go down right now. He don't even know what I'm about to do right here. Because only God can multiply what we cannot. John 6, verses 8 through 11. Let's jump down here. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, well, there's a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves. He took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed to those who received. So also with the fish, as much as they wanted. I love the fact that Andrew, he ends up bringing this little boy. He ends up bringing this little boy who's got 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Y'all, you know what's so amazing about that? That in that day, that was poor people's food. That's it. It was poor people's food. This little boy, that's all he had. He had a Lunchable, in essence. You guys ever try to eat a Lunchable? Okay, grown man, it takes me like 20 Lunchables. One Lunchable ain't gonna do it. All right, you can't hand me a Lunchable and I'm gonna be satisfied with that. No, I need like 20 of them things. All right, we're stacking them. We stack them high. Okay. Maybe I'm the only one. I thought everybody else did that. I missed. But this is poor people's food. There's a point here. Listen to me. Look up here. There's a point here. It does not matter what you bring to Jesus. If you bring whatever it is that you have to Him with faith, He can use it for His glory. Student, it does not matter what you bring to Him. If you bring it in faith, He can use it for His glory. This little boy had poor people's food, but yet he stepped up in faith of saying, here you go. And I love that, the part of the story as well of the fact that Andrew ends up bringing him. Andrew didn't even believe that was going to, obviously he was like, okay, the story actually indicates Andrew really didn't want to bring the little boy, okay, because he was already like, what's this? This is nothing. Like, this is really nothing, okay? I don't know. This little boy, he came up to me. He says he's got 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. I'm almost like, okay, kid, whatever. And the kid's probably like, can I give it to Jesus? Jesus could do something with it. Let me give it to him. And I can see Andrew being like, oh my goodness, man, y'all get this kid. Okay, the kid's being persistent. Let's take him over to Jesus. Let's give it to him. Because he kind of says a snide remark. Don't y'all know people who say snide remarks? Andrew was the one who ends up saying the snide remark, and he goes, here, Jesus, here's a little boy. Says he brought it to him, but I don't think Andrew really wanted to bring the little boy because he's probably thinking, this little boy's got nothing. Come on, this is not going to do anything. But anyways, reluctantly, he ends up bringing the little boy to Jesus, and the little boy ends up giving it to him, and I love the fact that Andrew ends up going back and he says, this little boy's got 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what is that for so many? You notice also, Andrew, it's not necessarily, Philip and Andrew, it's not necessarily a bad response. Because they're thinking naturally. They're, again, thinking from a human perspective. They're looking at that, they're like, yo, 1 Lunchable ain't gonna feed 5,000. Okay, these little 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, would we not look at that and say, no, right? Logically speaking, we would look at that and say, there's no way. But yet that little boy comes in faith and ends up giving it to Jesus. And what's Jesus do with it? He multiplies it in ways that little boy and his own disciples and the people all surrounding and watching could have never, ever imagined. See, we can limit what God does in us by assuming what is and is not possible. I'm going to say that again.
We do, just like Philip and Andrew. We can limit what God does in us by assuming what is and is not possible. They looked at the situation, right? They looked at the situation and they said, it ain't happening. We're not feeding this many people. It's going to take 200 denarii. It's going to take 9 months' salary. We don't have that. It's not happening. Their response necessarily wasn't all that bad because they were just looking at it from that perspective. But Jesus was using this as an opportunity to test them and to grow them in their faith. Doesn't he do this with us, y'all? Boy, he does this. But it's us. We tend to put limits on God. Don't we? We tend to put limits on God. God can't use me because I don't have enough knowledge of the Bible. I've heard that so many times. I don't have enough knowledge, so God can't use me. God can't use me because I'm not an athlete and I don't have the influence like he or she has. God can't use me. God can't use me because I'm not as talented as them. You look up and you see the band. Some of you might think, well, they're talented, and that's why God's using them. I'm not as talented as them, therefore God can't use me. We tend to put limits on what God can do with us. We tend to do that. But I want you guys to realize that because of Jesus, in this story, because of Jesus, and then the little boy, we have more of an effect than we might realize. We have more of an effect than we might realize. What that little boy did, could you imagine that little boy? Do you think he had any idea the effect that he was going to have in that step of faith that he took? With bringing his little lunch and giving it to Jesus. But he stepped out in faith. He gave what he had, and he said, I just want to give it to Jesus. He might be able to do something far beyond with this than I could ever do. And I'm willing to just take a step of faith. Students, it's so important that you are just willing to just say in your heart and in your mind, even out loud, and just say, God, I may not have that much, but I'm willing to just take a step and just do something with what I have. Will you use it? Whatever it is for you, student, if you're just willing to just take a step and not just be a bystander, not just be a person in a chair, but actually be someone that God will use, it takes a step of faith. That little boy took a step of faith to bring what he had to give it to Jesus, and Jesus used it. That little boy in and of himself would have never performed the miracle. The miracle was because of Jesus. But guess what? The step of faith was the effect that that little boy had on a multitude of people. And guess what? 2,000 years later, we're still talking about what that little boy did. There could be times right now that you could be literally doing amazing things if you just said, "Wait, God could be using you. I'm going to take a step. I may not have all the knowledge. I may not be as talented. Good night, Lord. I don't even know what to do. But I have a little bit of ability. And I'm willing to give it to you. Will you take it and will you use it? Because only God can multiply what we cannot. And he can multiply things in our life and use us for ways that we would never, ever on our own abilities be able to do. And the point of this story is I'm about to land the plane. The point of the story, the overall point of the story, is really not the little boy. It's really about Jesus, right? It's what Jesus did. Because the point of the story is to show that Jesus is God. Some of you guys, you might be wrestling with that in your heart and your mind right now. You're like, you know what? I come here, I come to church, but I'm just not sure about all this stuff. That's okay. Welcome. I really am so glad you're here. And I want you to be here. This is the best place for you to be here. Because guys, you could be in your heart and mind wrestling with these things. But I want you to know that this is the place for you to be at. Because that's a great tension for you to be wrestling with. It's so important. So important. But in this story, it's to show that Jesus is God. He's the long-awaited Messiah, that means Savior, that was promised in the Old Testament. But here's the thing. That's the truth of the text. The application, like what can we draw out from the text, is of the story is to show that when we come to Jesus in faith and ask him to use our abilities and talents, he can end up doing incredible things. He can do incredible things. Y'all, the disciples and the adults in the story, I'm speaking to a room of mostly students. The disciples who were the adults in this story, technically they had more resources than the little boy, right? I mean, if you just kind of think about it, like, they probably had more income than the little boy. They probably had more abilities than the little boy. They probably had more than the little boy, right? But what they do in the story? What they do? They didn't do nothing. They did nothing in the story. The little boy actually stepped up and gave what he had, and then Jesus ends up using it to feed the 5,000. I know I'm being repetitive, but this is so important. It's so important. That's why I'm stressing to you guys, because I hear from people all the time. And I really do believe that there are some of you in this room right now. Look up here. There are some of you in this room. You're not doing anything because you don't feel that you have the talents as other people do. Because you don't have the knowledge. Because you may not feel that you're as influential on people than so-and-so. What happens is when you compare yourself to other people, you limit what God can do in your life. Because what you're doing is now you're comparing. You're saying, well, I'm not them, so therefore you throw your hands up, God can't use me. God's looking for you to take a step of faith. That little boy took a step of faith. And the effect that he had on people was magnanimous, and we're still talking about it. Student, you can have more of an effect on people than you realize. If you just take a step to say, God, I want you to use me. I don't even know what that's like, but I just want you to use me, and I'm willing. So whether you think you have a lot to offer, or whether you think you have a little to offer, listen to me, look here. Does not make an impact. It's what you do with what you have with Jesus that makes the impact. You have more effect than you realize. I'm going to end it with this, and then we'll be done. Then we'll break out the small groups. You have more of an effect than you realize with your family. There was a girl in our last ministry. She was what we would probably consider just non-believer, unchurched. If you told her to turn to a certain thing in the Bible, she wouldn't know. It'd be just one of those girls, okay? Sweetheart, love you. She ended up getting saved in our student ministry. Ended up starting to grow in her faith. And her mom and her family had a real rough upbringing. All right, they were a little bit rough and all of that. And she would always pray for her mom and her family that they would get saved. She came from a split home, and she lived with her mom. Well, anyways, this girl, I'll never forget it, this girl, she kept being persistent in inviting her mom to church. And her mom ended up getting saved. And her mom came up to me one day crying when she got saved, and she said, I got saved, she said, because of my daughter. And my daughter just kept inviting me to church. And now her family was dramatically changed because of an event and a step of faith. The effect that that girl had, she didn't even realize the effect that she was going to have on her mom and now her family. But all she did was just keep being persistent and inviting her mom to church. Finally, one day her mom did, got saved, and now her family's just amazing, just changing in just incredible ways. Guys, you have more of an effect than you realize. Even with your friends. I just want to say this. I know being in middle school and high school is really tough. And it's really difficult to try to have an impact. Especially if you really are trying to win them for Jesus. Guys, I believe that you guys can. But I also realize too that it can be difficult and challenging at times. To step out and really try to live out your faith in the school areas. But I believe that you guys can have more of an effect than you realize if you just take a step of faith. Just take a step of faith with little boy. I think that you can have more of an effect with your teammates and also your coworkers. I think that you guys have more of an effect than you realize.